Sammy, what can you tell me about school that you find really helpful and supportive with your group?
Well, they made like a memory box where whenever I want, I go to the memory box, and sometimes I bring some friends, sometimes I don't. And I just use that to like help me.
And is there anything that you think your school could be a bit better at?
Maybe like the awkward conversations, because sometimes it feels a bit alien talking to your teacher. I prefer if the teacher would come and talk to me privately without everyone hearing.
Last year, my teacher said to me, Miles, is it okay if we do a Father's Day card? And I nodded and I was like, it's fine, thank you so much for asking. And she said, we're going to watch this video. Is that okay with you? And that warmed my heart, and I was like, yeah. And she said, you can colour in as we watch the video. You can just do what you want. And I know Father's Day's hard for you. Basically, I had an amazing Father's Day card, and it was one of the most sincere ones I've ever had since. It made me feel like so happy and so acknowledged and like feeling seen for what's happened in my life.
So my dad died on a Thursday, and religiously you have to try and get the funeral done as quickly as possible. My only thought was I need to get into school and I have to plan this funeral. And I remember telling the pastoral teacher that my dad's dead, and she said, you can have this room, you can take all the time you want. And I think that was one of the most useful things that I could have experienced. And I think even though I don't remember much, I remember feeling like I was safe in that room. And I think that's what matters most.
I was sort of in college dealing with this entire grieving process, and everybody around me seemed to be saying, this was a really long time ago, why are you suddenly so upset about it now? And then when grades start slipping, as they inevitably do, it seemed very much as though they were trying to emphasise, yeah, you're kind of using this as an excuse, which from my perspective wasn't what was happening at all. In fact, I was finding it probably harder than I had immediately after my mum had died.
So I was bereaved in primary school at the end of year 5. My teacher, she had been bereaved when she was 10. She'd also lost her dad. And she saw me, hugged me, and asked me what I wanted to do. She valued my opinion and what I wanted to do because she knew herself how important that was. It shouldn't have taken someone with lived experience to make me feel seen. It should just be a given.
In the 3 days after his funeral, I sat 4 exams. That was very tricky and there wasn't much communication. I just wished I'd been asked in some instances. Quite often it was assumed that, I just wanted to be left alone and other options weren't really discussed, and I really would have appreciated that.
I had between 6 and 8 months completely out of education because it got to the point where there was a few instances where I was being basically bullied because of my dad dying, and school weren't doing anything about it. And there was one day where I just hit a point and I just went, no, I'm not going back. Rather than offering me support, it was kind of like I was being threatened basically, if I don't go in, do you want your mum to go to prison? And then we decided it was probably for the best that I changed schools, and that ended up being a really good thing because the school I went to it was a much smaller school and very much more like a community. At that school, there's a bereavement support group. So each week we got to meet up with each other, which was really nice.
I was bereaved during my final year of school. So I was in year 11, and I felt like I was completely ignored by my teachers and my staff and my form tutor. When I tried to get reassurance or support from these people who I was supposed to go to, it was just brushed under the carpet. And I remember seeing other people who obviously needed support in their different scenarios as well, getting the support. So I just thought, is my grief not valid enough for this?
My dad died in the summer holidays, and before everyone else went back in September, I was able to go in and make a plan to decide how I wanted it all to be addressed within the school community, like what language they wanted us to use around it and how I was going to deal with the change going back to school. And I think it's really important to have a plan, and a plan that is everyone is on the same page. There can be a lot of miscommunication and misunderstandings if everyone is not aware, especially in big institutions like sixth forms, colleges, unis. I hope that people are listened to, because it's so different for everyone that you can't make any assumption on what people need.
I think it's a lot of just like none of the teachers being trained or having the knowledge or terminology as well. So my form tutor, I came back after the weekend and I told her that my sister had committed suicide, and she literally went, "Oh my God, did she die?" I was like, okay, I get that you're young, you know, you're in your 20s, but then I'm 13 years old having to educate you about my own experience. And it's just like, you know, you say it once and you don't want to have to repeat yourself. So yeah, there was that. And then when like the counsellor would come to the door and collect you, it was a horrible way to do it in front of everyone. And she opened the door and was, "Oh, Abigail, you've got counselling, you need to go." Everyone looks, everyone's like, "Why have you got that?"